So last video, I talked about all the things that pissed me off about Yamaha. I talked about the greed because it really was greedy. Sorry, that was my phone. Um, yeah, it really was greedy. And they intentionally skipped models. You know, and I talk about this because these PSRs, I grew up around these keyboards. I did. And I'll never forget taking my first ever piano class in middle school. This was around 98, right? This is how I became so familiar with the PSR 500 and the other keyboards and the PSR line in general. Because every day I would go into this piano class and the teacher had, you know, a multitude of PSRs, right? She had the 500M. She had, she didn't have the 500. She had the 500M. Okay. And in the last video, let's recap here. In the last video, M stood for music. So the music store version, hence why it stood for music, right? Because it was sold in music stores. It came with the sustain pedal, you know, it came with um headphones, it came with the power supply, right? This was Yamaha survival kit before it became the survival kit, so to speak. So we had two versions, basically. It wasn't until the 520 came out that, or at least the 20 series, where everything kind of got simplified. Every keyboard you bought, whether it was at the music store or in the electronics store, it came with the power supply. Maybe not necessarily the sustain pedal or the headphones, but it did come out with the power supply. Keyboards usually didn't. Um, if you bought it from a consumer store like Fry's Electronics, Best Buy, Circuit City, etc. So, but let's talk about the good things about these PSRs, right? Because it's not all bad, you know. At the end of the day, they are making instruments to sell that benefit us as well. These keyboards, especially the high-end models, were near and dear to my heart. The PSR 500 was incredible. In the music class that I took, we had the PSR 500, 510, the 410, and we also had, there was one PSR 520. That was interesting. Um, and I also had a PSR 520 way back when. I also had the PSR 320. I touched on this in the beginning of the last video. They sounded great. They really did. They just lacked the features I wanted. The recording features, the style creation features. Like when I had especially when I had the PSR 520. When I had this keyboard, I didn't have anything else because I couldn't afford anything else, right? The keyboards with all the recording features were well over $1,000. Um, I really wanted the PSR 2000 for because it allowed me to record stuff. And I really wanted at the time it was actually the PSR 740 and not the PSR 2000 that came after it. Um, the 740 was incredible to me. I eventually got one, but then we took it back to the store, to get a Triton. And the Korg Triton was my first real professional instrument. Um, but I've always had a soft spot for the PSRs, and I still do to this day. Let me tell you why. When we're talking about PSRs and arrangers in general, this is a category that most people miss, really, or kind of abandon or judge because you have preset styles. Arranger keyboards today aren't your typical home keyboards anymore. They're not. Take the Yamaha DGX 670 as a prime example of this. It's an 88 key, fully professional arranger with most of the features of the PSR 9000 from 2000, updated sounds, what have you, for less than $1,000. And it came out 6, 7 years ago. That's fucking impressive. It really is. The DGX 670 is one of the best values I've ever seen in an arranger product. It really is. You have the style creator. You can create as many styles as you want, save them to a USB thumb drive. You've got a full-blown 16-track sequencer. That's impressive, right? And it sounds better than a 9000. Plus, you have 88 keys. Like, holy shit. And on top of that, you have USB MIDI. Take the USB connection from your keyboard to the computer, right? Or shall I say piano, to the computer. Now it doubles as a controller for your DAW or whatever it is you're using on the computer. You can extract whatever styles or tracks you create on this thing. You can extract into your DAW of choice, right? And continue making music. It's a phenomenal scratch pad. Probably one of the best scratch pads you'll ever own for less than $1,000. These are the good things about these keyboards, right? Let's talk about some of the better models. The SX 720 and 920. You can't go wrong with those keyboards. You really can't. The touchscreen, the value, yes, they're 22, 23, $2,500. Forget how much they are right now. But value for value, these are incredible keyboards. Like if you love Yamaha and you love their sounds, you're gonna love these keyboards. The portability, the built-in speakers, the recording features. There's so much to these keyboards, it's unbelievable. They're full-blown workstations right out of the box. you know, and this all started in the 90s. This all started with the PSR 500 in 1990, you know, 1991, where you had all of these features for, not a lot of money. There's something really special about these keyboards. And here's another tidbit about arrangers. Most people don't know how to fucking use them. Most people don't. This is why they get such a bad rap and they get judged so much. Because you're forgetting the fact that just because it's an arranger doesn't mean its own keyboard. The way you can create styles in these keyboards is insane. It's literally the equivalent of a pattern sequencer, except one thing. You could choose what chord specifically to record it in, right? So default is C major 7, right? The default is C major 7. But you could choose any chord to record in. A minor 7 ninth, minor 7 11th, you know, um, a C major ninth even without the 7. You had all, you could choose what chord to record your styles in. And then here's the crazy part. When you get done recording the style, the editing features are incredible, right? And on top of that, you have a multitude of effects and effect sends. Set a delay as an insert effect, set the um, reverb as a master effect, and then use the effect sends on each track. You know, excuse me. Use the effect sends on each track to adjust how much or how little you want. And then you could go into the effects themselves and adjust the parameters. It's all done via the mixing console in these keyboards. It's unbelievable. It really is. I think now you have per track E keys. And the effects section is so elaborate, it's insane. Like one of the crazy things about Genos is Genos allows for, I think I read about 22 effect processes within a single style. That is insane. That's beyond insane. That's the most I've ever seen. So the processing power of the Genos is incredible. And then it trickled down into the SX series. Now you've got the 720 plus. Makes me wonder where the 920 plus is. Because you have the 920, but not the 920 plus. Kind of weird. Maybe it's in the pipeline. I don't know. Sorry if I'm yawning. It's kind of, I know it gets contagious. Um, like, There's so much to talk about, and I'm just drawing a blank right now. There really is. I wish I could show you guys what I'm talking about because then it would give me credibility rather than just sitting here on my laptop and talking about it with a blurred background. But right now, this is kind of all I have. So forgive me. You know, we didn't all start off slick. Let's put it that way. I'm recording this on a 2014 MacBook Pro. I'm using what I have. So, yeah. Anyways, most people are using these keyboards wrong or don't even know how to use them. And they don't even know that they're using them wrong because they're not tapping into the multitude of features these keyboards have. They really don't. At one point, I had both the 8000. At one point, I had both the PSR 8000 and the PSR 9000. And the crazy thing about it is they both had their ups and downs in the sense that the 9000 was way better because it was 126 voices. And by the time I got creating styles, you know, by the time I got done, I could still do something on the right hand side, melodically or whatever, right? But on the 8000, I didn't have enough polyphony. I only had 64 voices on the 8000. So by the time I got creating a style, let's put it this way, I couldn't do anything on the right hand side. So they complemented each other beautifully. They really did. And I created a lot of music when I had these keyboards. I still have the hard drive from the 8000 and the floppies from the 9000 that I saved all my styles to. I can't wait to get another, duo and start creating music on those again, especially the 9000 Pro. That thing is incredible. It really is. 76 keys, no speakers. Link your 9000 to a 9000 Pro with an 8000. Game over. Game over. See, and the downside to the 8000 was I couldn't re I could record styles out from the keyboard into a workstation like let's say a Triton or an Oasis or a Kronos, but I couldn't play the style externally. That was the issue. The 9000 fixed that. The 9000 allowed me to um, actually play this style externally, which was incredible. So the 9000 could double as a module too. Same thing with the 9000 Pro. Um, like I knew these keyboards like the back of my hand. And despite all the things I've talked about in the previous videos, Yamaha really did make some incredible keyboards. I just wish they had done more. You know, I just wish that they had put in the money to do more because it wasn't hard to do. The research was already done. The R&D was already done. All they had to do was make a few more variations of these products and, give us, the consumers, more and better choices, you know, because what they excelled at, they really excelled at. They really did. No, they don't make them like they used to because they're so feature packed now. They're so elaborate now. But the days of spending $500 for an intermediate level keyboard is kind of over. You would need a PSRS 670 or an SX 600, which is a $1,200 keyboard now to get the same thing you used to get for $500 in the 90s. It kind of sucks because there's a lot of people who would love to have these keyboards on. They can't afford them anymore, you know? So I'm lucky to be able to experience what I've been able to experience in my life. I really am, despite the limited resources I had as a kid and with my love for these keyboards. As I said, the features are phenomenal. The way you can create styles and the way you can really make this keyboard your own is incredible now. And so it's not all bad. It's not all bad. My gripes with Yamaha just has to do with what feels like greed at a corporate level. Artists and corporations do not mix. Let's make that very, very clear. They really don't. And as an artist myself, and as somebody who uses these keyboards and loves them to pieces, it really breaks my heart to see companies not making the products that I know people would want to see, because if I had been in the decision making process of these companies, things would have been done a lot differently. A lot differently. The only 76 note arranger is either in the highest end or the intermediate level. There's literally no in between. You know, it'd be nice if Yamaha came out the PSR Pro series, you know, with a 76 key PSR SX 720 or 920 plus. They're doing with the EW series, with the Education series, but they're not doing with their higher end, you know, arrangers. It makes no sense. Why not? You know, so yeah, there's a lot. As you can see, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to uncover here. But, I'm going to talk about Korg. I'm going to talk about Roland. I'm going to talk about all these different companies. My gripes, the good things, the bad things, the ugly things, what we need to fix. There's a lot of fixing that needs to happen, at least in my view. Day in, day out, using these instruments, using what I have right now, and seeing what I'm seeing, in the industry and the features, and getting, you know, what limited access I have to them. Like every chance I get, I try to go see these keyboards. And unfortunately, right now, there's no music store in existence to where I can try out a lot of these keyboards I'm going to be talking about, unfortunately. A few years ago, I used to be able to, but not anymore. Guitar Center really dropped the ball with Korg, and it's sad to see because now I kind of have to buy one before I can really experience them again, and that's not an issue. One day I'll be able to, but right now I don't have the money or the space as we speak. So, but I want to bring my voice into everything wrong about this industry and how to fix it because there's a lot that needs improving. There really is, especially on the hardware side of things. Not everybody wants to use a computer, and that's the bottom line, you know? So this is Aurelius Unhinged, and I'm saying don't settle.